Good morning, Sue Smith with you for my last day here replacing Elias. He is enjoying a well-deserved vacation. He'll be back with you next week. And Dan Delmar will be here for a couple of days at the beginning of next week as well. But it's great to be with you. And looking over to the United States and Donald Trump, he has said that he will make a decision about bombing Iran within 2 weeks. And as you may have heard on the news, apparently he's really increasingly relying on a very small group of advisors. But one of the factors in his decision could be the backlash he's facing by his own supporters. People like Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon, and Marjorie Taylor Greene have argued that such involvement violates his America First promise. That is, if he decides to join in the military campaign with Israel. Julian Spencer-Churchill is an associate professor of political science at Concordia, and he joins me on the line. Good morning.
Hello again, Sue.
So could you just explain how the possibility of joining the military campaign violates the America First promise?
Well, the America Firsters, who are the grassroots isolationists, these are the least educated, the least wealthy component of Trump's base, don't want to get involved in foreign wars, in part because they have the experience of enrolling in the military. And not only do the boomer generation, those born after World War II, remember Vietnam, but there are multiple generations that remember both the Iraq and the Afghanistan wars, where that community, who are closely connected to the veterans, the post-war veterans who suffered physical and mental trauma, have discovered that, or rather believe that they were tricked by wartime propaganda. I mean, both in the U.S. and Canada, one of the propaganda tricks used by the Harper government and by the U.S. government was the sunk cost fallacy. Look, we've gone there. We've built all these schools. We've suffered so many dead and wounded. We can't give up now. We can't abandon our friends. And so the America Firsters, who are essentially isolationists, and Trump didn't invent these guys. These guys go way back to Senator Borah, who was very active in the 20s and 30s, trying to keep America out of Europe. The Americans were never isolationists. They're a trading state. They were chasing whale oil in the 19th century, but they don't want to get entangled in complicated diplomacy. And so from the 1900s until Pearl Harbor, the Americans were heavily engaged in Asia, where they could control how deeply they got engaged in. So you've got this fight going on right now. But I want to emphasize Trump is very popular still in the Republican Party, largely because of domestic politics. And if you ask the American population at large, including independents, do you want to see an Iran with an atomic bomb? Overwhelmingly, more than 75% agree America should do something. So the MAGA resistance against foreign involvement is actually quite small. I mean, if you look at the number of individuals who've stood up on behalf of that, it's actually a very small part of his party. And it's played up in the media because they are fairly, clearly technically incompetent. Not the America Firsters, but those that want to go abroad and bomb Iran. They really, Ted Cruz didn't know the population of Iran, which is a replay of Vietnam. But American people, they elect their leaders not on the basis of their knowledge of what's going on abroad. Most Americans, they're not like Canadians, they're not like Europeans or Japanese or Chinese. They don't go abroad to vacation. The Americans disproportionately stay within their own country. They don't travel abroad, and they know their leaders don't know that much abroad. But I mean, you see it from the American perspective. For much of the post-World War II period, the state of Ohio had a higher GDP, a bigger economy than all of Mexico. So the American attitude is we have nothing to learn from anything abroad. We're a highly productive people. We accept that our leaders are, perhaps ignorant of sort of the classics and they're not well-traveled like Mark Twain, but they're here to provide, our life here. Yeah. Most Americans don't care about foreign policy. Foreign policy in the U.S., unlike Canada, is a debate among elitists and or political decision makers. And so it's really, for at least the Americans, it's really between the left-wing internationalists, people that want to bring human rights and development, and the business internationalists who are in the Republican Party.
Right.
So, you've got these, two groups. On the one hand, realpolitik. On the other hand, they're applying the values of American society. And then you've got the other half who are also on the left and the right, who don't want to get involved because of imperialism and because of entanglement. So I don't think they're that influential. And the media is just picking up on this division, but it's not politically substantial. It's not the reason why Trump is waiting 2 weeks.
Okay.
He's waiting
Okay, for sure. But I just want to dial back for a second because you've given us a ton of information in there, and I really kind of appreciate the sort of history of it. But it's also true, and I hear you that most people may be not paying attention to international relations, but it's also true that Trump campaigned on that, and Trump did promise to keep whatever it was he said, boots out of other countries, and now it does look like he is thinking about maybe getting involved. Now, and there's always that debate about, well, if you just bombed, you actually have to bring personnel in. But so I guess I'm wondering, from your point of view, for his brand, whether or not he certainly is facing pushback by MAGA supporters, but does it damage his brand among his supporters?
I think it's a gamble. It's an interesting question, Sue. I think we'll see it at the midterm elections, and it's whether or not he can pull it off, whether or not he can bomb the targets in Iran. I mean, in some ways, I describe his foreign policy, if he's a friend of Israel, as rather cruel. Not doing anything for 2 weeks is basically him letting Israel bear the brunt, but it's also Trump observing what the Pakistanis who have nuclear weapons and are very sympathetic to Iran, and the Chinese who have provided a nuclear umbrella to Pakistan, and the Russians who are actually grateful the Americans are no longer providing supplies to Ukraine are going to do. And so, Israel is going to be a pincushion for the next 2 weeks receiving Iranian bombardments. Trump is sitting back and looking. Now, if he bombs the targets in Iran and then the Iranians fold, then, those that oppose him getting involved in the Middle East, and, the Americans can bomb from Diego Garcia, which is a tiny island in the middle of the Indian Ocean. They've already evacuated their airplanes from the Persian Gulf, so there's nothing the Iranians can hit locally. So he's protected most of the Americans unless they get shot down by an airplane, which is always possible. The Serbs did shoot down one stealth airplane. But, if he pulls it off and the Iranians fold, he will do well in the next midterm elections. If, however, the Iranians close the Straits of Hormuz and there's no more oil for, say, Japan, South Korea, and many European countries, and Europeans and Japan, despite all their combined militaries, they cannot open the Straits of Hormuz because it's mountainous, difficult terrain. Then the Americans are going to have to invade, and then you're looking at a very large-scale conflict. At that point, Trump will lose. But he doesn't care. It's his last term. He's got 3 more years. He's obviously pursuing what most presidents pursue, which is trying to figure out how they're going to make an income when they leave. Now, I think he's thinking probably about his family legacy because he's pushing on in age. But, you want to make friends while you're president so that when you're out, you've got the speaking tours and you get to sit on the boards of various companies like, Bechtel.
You actually think Trump is worried about his income after he leaves as the president? I mean, isn't he making money hand over fist on so many different things?
Well, the number one concern of all billionaires is not to fall below other billionaires. Right. These guys, if you're making a lot of money, then you're psychologically obsessed with making more money. This is not a psychological state I think most people would choose, right? Especially in a postmodernist society. But I think he's thinking about his family.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we'll leave it there, but it's certainly going to be interesting to see what happens in this 2-week pause. Not very characteristic. I mean, maybe he's going to try to make a deal, Julian. But,
all right, thank you, Sue.
Bye-bye. That's
Bye.
Julian Spencer-Churchill. He's an associate professor of political science at Concordia University, making the case that the story about the MAGA and the people really opposing Trump is overblown. But definitely he's got opponents saying, it's really it goes against everything that we stand for if Trump does invade Iran or certainly get America involved in that conflict.